Hi, Yoroshiku. Welcome to the Sunday stream from Daishu-in West. I'm Koju. Beautiful weather these days at the temple. Kind of bikuri suru gurai. Like surprisingly good weather. It was supposed to turn lousy tonight, it sounds like. But just gorgeous fall days. Although it gets dark now at 5 o'clock. But it just means we're done with Samu a little bit early, and we get on the cushion a little bit earlier. So that works out fine. So I wanted to revisit the Hanashi, the talk about Engi. As some of you might recall, Engi is what I'm translating as, codependent arising. Everything depends on everything else. And usually, the way I've talked about this in the past is, in sort of like a Gaian kind of ecological kind of way, where it makes it, a web of life. It makes it kind of easy to conceptualize, but it's not a conceptual thing. It's a concrete experience. So perhaps better, what occurred to me as perhaps a better way to approach codependent arising, or the innate, the sameness of all phenomena, or the identity of all phenomena, is by, instead of looking at things, looking at where we are right now, ourselves. And of course, if you are familiar with Buddhism at all, you know about the five skandhas. The aggregates that we use to make up, to describe the experiences that the self thing, the person thing, has. This is like the little self, the little person, the I thing. Form, thoughts, feelings, volition, and consciousness. And these are just, it's different in different traditions. It hasn't always been the same. It's not a hard rule. It's not a complete description of anything. It's just a convenient way of characterizing experiences that arise for the person. I can kind of put them into one of these heaps. But, of course, like we said last time when talking about Engi, any one of those things that arise, like with exterior phenomena, when we look closely at it, it does not arise of itself separate from everything else. A thought of something doesn't arise just spontaneously. It usually comes from the thought before, or something that happens in form, or a feeling that we have, and we're like, I should maybe do something about this feeling. Or, it doesn't, no man is an island, right? It does not arise spontaneously, unconnected to anything else. It comes from context. It depends on context. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't for context. And in fact, it wouldn't exist if everything else wasn't the way it is. And then as everything else changes, in something that we or normally identify as a separate Dharma changes. Be that a thought, feeling, form, volition, consciousness, whatever. Consciousness is often, I often look at as sort of the context. Like, where are these things happening? Where are these thoughts happening? Where do these feelings arise? And they arise and disappear within a larger, sphere that we call consciousness, which permeates everywhere in all directions. So none of these things have any sort of independent life of their own. They all depend everything that arises for I depends on everything else. There's no exterior phenomena that we can really nail down as exterior. We say, there's a tree as if it was an exterior thing, but really all we know is, the mental image of a tree, right? This is sort of basic epistemological sort of stuff. And followed to its logical conclusion, we come to the everything is mind idea. All things just exist as manifestations in consciousness. And so that's myself, right? All things that arise are therefore, myself. And there is, nothing else. So, all those things arise, all the supposed things arise connected to each other, dependent upon each other. They arise together with each other and occur no other place other than myself. And we can conveniently characterize them into one of the five aggregates. And recently, I became aware that there were these interviews with Morinaga Soka-Roshi, which aired on Japanese national TV in the early 90s. Maybe one of them was the late 80s. And so I asked our good friend Rie if she could find out how to get them, and she asked Daishu-in-san, visiting there for Zazen, and he said, "Oh, I have them on DVD." So she brought some DVDs when she arrived the other day. One DVD with two different interviews of the Roshi, 2-hour-long interviews, and it's a very casual sort of a thing, just him sitting down at the temple with an interviewer and talking for an hour, answering a few questions, but mostly just talking. And he approached this topic in an interesting way, in a way that I hadn't heard before, where he asked the interviewer, he said, "Well, you weren't born after your parents died, were you?" And the interviewer's like, "Well, no, of course not. Everybody's born before their parents die. That is to say that everybody's life is a branch of their parents' life. And going back and back and back, like everything that lives is itself an expression of the same life. There wasn't like a life that occurred some other time. It's all one thing. And provisionally, okay, like this is this body and that's that body, and it was born then and it dies then, or what have you. But it's the same life. We'll call it life for this. It's the same essence, we could say. But for the sake of this talk, we'll say life. And going back and back and back, and if we remember our elementary school biology class, we remember that in the beginning, there was just little single cell things, flopping around, and they got together and teamed up and made bigger things and made bigger things and made bigger things, and then here we are, right? But even before that, and even now, because time is just an arbitrary distinction as well. There's not really any time. There's just this moment right here. But even now, it's not as if like the things that we call living things only depend on the other living things, and they don't depend on like the so-called non-living, like inorganic things, which the Roshi also in this talk, points out that that's just an arbitrary distinction as well. The so-called seibutsu, museibutsu, living things, and not like, or maybe inorganic things, like the rocks and the air, is supposedly like this inorganic thing, right? And the rocks are this, they're, I suppose organic is is applicable, but you know what I mean. They're usually not considered to be life. However, it's not true that we don't depend upon them. Obviously, we depend upon the air. We depend upon all the inorganic things as well. All dharmas depend upon each other. And all dharmas only arise as they are because all things are as they are. And in this case, dharma just means, in this sense anyway, it just means a manifest thing, stuff. Something that manifests, an arising of a thing. But we can't say, it's not appropriate just to say stuff or, manifest things. Although, I do sometimes because it makes the point. But the reason why we say dharmas and not just stuff is because saying dharmas indicates the Buddha nature of the thing. That it is an expression of Buddha nature itself. And when if you just say stuff, then that's not clear. In fact, it kind of denigrates it, right? So it's important in this context because what we're indicating is the life, that it is itself the one life, the one Buddha nature, as the rocks and as the trees and as the breeze that blows and as Koju and whoever else, right? It's all the same life. In fact, there can be no other, because if there was other, then things would not be as they are. Things would be, there would be. It's just not possible. It's just not how things are. There would be separation. And there is no separation. And that is plainly obvious if we look into it, if we look at it. There's no this and that. Provisionally, okay, there's this body and that body. But if we look closely, we see that the trials and tribulations of me, the so-called me, right? And the trials and tribulations of the so-called you, and, the joys and ecstasies, are in fact not separate. Nothing, in fact, is separate. And there is nothing that is omitted from this. All things are as they are, that one life. Right now. Because there isn't any time. There isn't actually any inheritance that happens. It's not as if they become one of that life when they're born or something, because that's just an idea, right? Nobody knows their own birth. We have it on good authority that it happened. But what do we actually know about it, right? And nobody knows when they're going to die either. We have it on good authority that it's going to happen. But all we really know is that which is right now arising as it is. All of the myriad so-called different dharmas which appear in difference, but the same dharma, the same life. And nothing is excluded. I mean, that's the point I'd like to end on, I suppose. Nothing is excluded. Like, we always fall back into our own small viewpoints, person-based viewpoints, where we say, okay, well, maybe that doesn't work for me today. I don't think I appreciate that today. I want things to be different. And so therefore, that stuff that I don't like is different. It's not, it's not Dharma. It's excluded. It's a bad thing, and I don't think it should be. And actually, even that judgment, even that attitude itself is the same life, manifesting as small, judgmental attitude of an alleged person. But that life itself excludes nothing. It doesn't discriminate. It's not even as if it accepts all things, because it is all things. There's no acceptance or rejection required. It's already it as it is. Without any crack. Without any inertia or needing to. It doesn't become it or anything. It's not it if we realize it, because one of the fantastic thing is that even in a so-called deluded, self-centered, small, complainy, whatever it is, even in that, it's already it. It doesn't need to become anything else or do anything else. It's already that one life. Can't even get away from it if you wanted to. So, like it or not, it's already there, all the time, 100%, without any gap, or it's never less than 100%. It's already closer than our own eyebrows. Thank you for tuning in. Well, we're on a roll. There's no problems in the next few weeks. So I'll be back next Sunday at 1:30. Please take good care, and if you'd like to contact the temple, it's contact at Daishu-in West.org. ありがとうございました。